Both of these mountain bikes are under $1,000 and they come with everything you need. Full suspension, dropper seat post, hydraulic disc brakes, and they're ready to hit real jumps. But which is the better bike? Walmart's Ozark Trail FS3 Fast Flow or Polygon Syscue D6. Only one can be king, and today I'm going to choose one. But first, why is this comparison even worth making? Recently, I reviewed Walmart's FS3 Fast Flow, which costs $898. And I found that it can legitimately run with the big dogs. This will do everything a $5,000 bike will do. It'll just hurt you more. Now, in reviewing the Fast Flow, some commenters brought up Polygon, some even implying that Polygon makes bikes that mop the floor with this thing, and I wondered what Polygon they might be talking about. Yes, for $1,500 or $2,000, Polygon has way better bikes, but for an apples-to-apples comparison, we need to stay below $1,000. And so, enter the Polygon Syscue D6, which is a $999 full suspension, 120mm trail bike, a fair comparison. And folks, I gotta be honest, it's not looking good for the Polygon. I'll be referring to the Walmart bike as the Fast Flow and the Polygon as the Syscue. Let's go tit for tat. The Fast Flow has modern 29-inch wheels and tires, while the Syscue has 27.5-inch wheels and tires, which are now considered outdated. The Fast Flow comes with tubeless ready rims and tires, which are standard on high-end mountain bikes, while the Syscue does not come with tubeless ready rims or tires, and in fact, the tires are narrower. The Fast Flow comes with a Suntour air fork that you can adjust to your body weight, while the Syscue comes with a Suntour coil fork, which has limited adjustability. The Fast Flow even comes with a larger 180mm rear rotor, while the Syscue has a 160. Now, if you don't understand any of this stuff, I'll sum it up. It matters. The Fast Flow, the Walmart bike, absolutely trounces the Polygon when you look at the features that most people care about. Not only that, but it's $100 less. So is the Syscue dead right out of the gate? Has the Fast Flow Syscued it? Actually, if we dig deeper, Polygon punches back hard. So hard, it might make you reconsider buying the Fast Flow. So let's get our hands dirty. First of all, I weighed both of these bikes, and the Polygon Syscue D6 weighs 5 pounds less than the Fast Flow. Let me remind you that 5 pounds on a 120mm trail bike might as well be 5 tons. And so, I'll repeat myself. This Syscue, even with a coil fork, still weighs 5 pounds less than the Fast Flow. Wow! Now, sure, it does have smaller wheels, and overall it seems like a smaller bike, but that's not enough to explain 5 pounds. See, it turns out these two bikes are very different, and a simple comparison of components doesn't explain everything. What does explain a lot is where these bikes stand in their respective lineups. The Fast Flow is Walmart's flagship Ozark Trail mountain bike. It sits at the top of a lineup of cheaper bikes. Things like the handlebar, stem, drivetrain, pedals, they look familiar because you'll find them on cheaper bikes like the FS2, the Ridge, and the Vibe. Now, the Syscue D6 is in the opposite position. It sits near the bottom of Polygon's full suspension lineup. It contains features that have trickled down from higher-end bikes. So what you'll find when you examine these bikes is a different build philosophy. Walmart went for big wins, like the air fork, and they paid for it by going with way cheaper stuff in other areas. Polygon went with a more balanced approach. No one part is killer, but the bike overall is pretty impressive. Let me give you a few examples. In the Fast Flow video, I mentioned how impressive a dropper seat post is in this price range. These are standard on higher end bikes, and they let you switch from a dropped position for jumping and descending to a perfect pedaling position for climbing and traversing. You can do this on the fly right from the handlebars. And yes, Walmart's Fast Flow comes with a dropper post, but it's only 100mm, which I mentioned is pretty laughable. Even 10 years ago, most mountain bikes came with at least 120mm of drop. The Polygon Syscue D6 comes with a 150mm dropper post right out of the box on this size small. That's what my Pivot Trailcat came with, but it gets even better. This longer dropper post actually sits deeper in the frame than the Fast Flow. Seat post insertion depth is something we make a big deal about on high-end bikes, and Polygon took that into account here. So not only does this let you get lower and gain better control of the bike, but it frees up your options for the future. On the contrary, that was one of the Fast Flow's hard limitations, meaning a limitation that you can't get around with an upgrade. And Polygon has got more punches. The contact points like the seat, the pedals, and the grips are all better on the Syscue, and not just by a little bit. This stuff is a lot better. I mentioned how laughable the grips were on the Fast Flow and how they'd be the first thing I would replace. As far as I know, the Syscue uses the same grips as its higher-end brothers and sisters. They feel quite good. And some of these parts really matter, like the cranks. In the Fast Flow video, I mentioned how that splined crankset and external bottom bracket adds stiffness and water resistance. The Syscue has all that too, only it's Shimano with a machined aluminum chainring. This might not impress a beginner, but it'll lead to better chain retention and longevity. It probably saves weight too. And when you dig into the details, you find countless ways the Syscue is just more refined. Look over here where the cables route into the frame. If you look at the same spot on the Fast Flow, it's just a hole in the aluminum frame. On the Syscue, there are rubber inserts which reduce rattling and wear. And on the cosmetic differences, the Fast Flow has a flat Ozark Trail logo on the head tube, while Polygon has a proper 3D head badge. That particular item does nothing for performance, but it's an indicator of where this bike comes from. Look all over the Syscue and you'll see things like torque specs printed directly on the linkage bolts and even little cable management clamps. To pay for all those big ticket parts, Walmart had to make deep cuts anywhere they could, while Polygon seemed to be unwilling to do that in any one area. But those concerns might seem kinda nuanced when in reality, somebody's gonna save up for one of these bikes or get it for their birthday and immediately go out and try to hit jumps. And so, which of these bikes is better for jumping? Let's go hit some jumps. So we're gonna try jumping on the Fast Flow first, and if you're coming from a hardtail, you should take note of the rear shock. If your rebound damping is set too fast, it'll tend to make you go nose heavy, maybe even go over the handlebars. I've already adjusted the rebound damping on this shock. It controls how fast it returns to position. This ensures you're nice and level when you take off. Let's go hit a little pack of intermediate jumps. Now, I already did some jumping on this bike, and I actually like it, even though the dropper post doesn't go as low as I would want it to. Stays nice and level in the air. Suspension's predictable. A 120mm trail bike should jump well, and this does. I enjoy it. No surprises here. The Fast Flow was good at jumping in the review video. It still is. It's actually impressively so. I'm a little bit more worried about the Syscue, and I'll tell you why. The rear shock on the Syscue is also a Suntour Radon, but it's the Radon LO, which stands for lockout. So you flip this switch and it locks this like it's not there. You flip it the other way and now it's a rear shock. You can't adjust the rebound damping at all. That's what keeps you level in the air. That's what keeps you from going over the handlebars. Now, I do believe this does have a fixed damper, so I'm gonna take the jumps kind of slow, maybe not clear them, and see how it feels. Okay, despite the dropper post having a lot of drop, I actually don't necessarily feel like I'm in a better position on this bike. All right, let's just feel this out. Actually, oh. This bike jumps amazing! Honestly, when it comes to jumping, I have to put these two bikes on equal footing. I did not expect this to behave so predictably in the air. Mileage is gonna vary depending on your riding style, weight, and all that, but this thing's solid. I would jump all day on this bike. I might even like jumping on this better than the Fast Flow. So they're both great for jumps. That's a good thing, but we all know that mountain biking isn't always about jumping. Some, or probably most people, are gonna use these to ride actual trails. And so I organized a sort of blind test with some people who have never ridden either of these bikes. Let's take a trip down to the local high school and meet with the cross-country team. I took both the Fast Flow and the Syscue down to Nesbitt Discovery Academy in Asheville and let the mountain bike club take them for a rip. All they got to do is experience each bike and give a first impression. It was during lunchtime in street clothes with only 45 minutes to give everyone a try. I didn't point out any of the features like the rebound damping or 29-inch wheels or tubeless tires or lack thereof. I didn't give them the price, and students varied from experienced mountain bikers to total beginners. The results were kind of shocking.
I like the suspension more. It's a lot smoother.
I definitely like this bike better. It fit me a lot better. And it was like easier to go uphill.
I think I would go with the Polygon just because it's got nicer parts on it.
I like the Polygon better. I like the Geo on it.
I think the geometry of the yellow bike is a little bit better.
If you were to choose either bike to have, which one would you like better?
Probably this one.
Overwhelmingly, the Syscue won, and a few students mentioned how much they disliked the handlebars on the Fast Flow, an opinion I share. The results could be due to limited seat time, the trail, or to the fact that the Syscue has better contact points right out of the box. But most students didn't care about the air fork, the adjustable dampers, or tubeless tires. They just knew that the Polygon was more comfortable and more intuitive, which it is. So take these results for what they are, and thank you Nesbitt Discovery Academy for letting me do this. And so with that, you have some other opinions to consider, but that was a little cross-country course and not much time, to be honest. I find that with most mountain bikes, things really start to come into focus when you take them on a ride. So I set these bikes up as best I could for my weight and riding style, then I took them on the same short route. 3.7 miles with 750 feet of elevation gain and drop. I did it first on the Polygon Syscue D6. We're gonna be climbing for a while, so actually, if I flip this little lockout down here, it's gonna make the bike a lot firmer for climbing. The Syscue actually climbs surprisingly well, partly because it's a little lighter. It also has a really smooth drivetrain, but I think the biggest reason is it's actually a cross-country bike. It's made for climbing. And so on this long slug, even in steep sections, even in technical sections, this thing is quite pleasant to ride. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I don't know how long we've been climbing. Listen to 4 metal songs. Time to go downhill. Gotta remember to put the fun switch in the on position. All right. Oh yeah. Wow, actually, the rear suspension's pretty good, considering what it is. Yeah, it's definitely clear that these are not tubeless tires. They're not high volume tires. There's a lot of chatter. The big bumps are soaked up by the suspension, but the little ones, you're gonna feel them. So if you've ever ridden an entry-level mountain bike with a Suntour coil fork, you know it's, a cheap Suntour coil fork. Oh, ooh. Couldn't make that one. This one isn't bad. This is a little bit further up the line, so it has rebound damping, and it matters. It changes it. It feels a lot better. And the 27.5-inch wheels, that bothers some people. It's like 29 or nothing. It doesn't really bother me. I don't think that's going to be your limitation. But I do hope they update this bike soon, because it's really a killer entry-level bike. So I've been riding for long enough in my life. Oh, I was about to say something really profound, but we blew the rear tire, which is one of the pitfalls of non-tubeless tires. I also dented the rim really good. Could be that these rims just are not up to the task of going that fast. All right, so that's the end of the ride on the Syscue D6. So what I was going to say before that is that I've been riding for long enough now where it takes a lot to get my arms and hands tired. I can kind of descend all day and feel fine. I was starting to get tired on this bike. It's a lot. The coil fork does not work like a higher end air fork, but for the type of riding that a beginner is going to be doing, I think it's gonna be fine. So sad. I didn't know I was gonna have to work on wheels today. After that ride on the Syscue D6, I did the same lap on the Fast Flow. So the second you sit down on the Fast Flow, it feels more substantial. It could be how sensitive the suspension is. It just cush when you sit down on it. Doesn't climb as well. Feels heavier, more sluggish because it is. Drivetrain's a little more grindy, although really not bad. And all in all, it doesn't climb terrible. Rear shock also trades a lockout for an adjustable damper. I would rather the adjustable damper. So it's a pretty good trade-off. One thing I've already said I don't like about this bike is the grips. The grips in the handlebars, they feel terrible. And it's not just the grips, it's the actual shape of the handlebars. I've tried adjusting them in every direction, and I just don't like them as much as the Polygon Syscue, but that's pretty inexpensive to correct. And the seating position is, you know, more trail, and that could show us some gains on the descent. All right, here's this tree stump again. Okay, feels about the same as the Polygon. All right, we're about to go downhill, and I can't say I'm not just a little bit worried. See, these same tubeless wheels and tires that are gonna help us maintain our momentum, they're also gonna let us go faster and hit rocks even harder. And so while we might have some flat protection here, there's nothing protecting the rim. We could blow it to pieces. One thing working to our advantage is these tires are higher volume, and so they should offer a little more protection. Wish me luck. Okay, Ozark Trail Fast Flow from Walmart, $898. On this smooth, flowy stuff, both bikes perform about the same because the tires don't matter as much. But the Fast Flow, this bike, does feel noticeably more sluggish. It's harder to make it do the things you want it to do, but that can be a good thing. It's more stable. The Polygon is very snappy and twitchy. This does feel stable like a proper trail bike. And yes, the suspension feels better, and the wheels and tires feel better. I got hung up on something before that last time, and I wasn't able to catch that. Okay, so here's where the bikes really start to feel different. You can't beat lower pressure, higher volume tires. Yeah, especially in this stuff, you just carry more speed. That could really get you into trouble though. So there was a little pull up here that I cased really bad last time. Here it is. Still cased it. Maybe if I had a couple of tries, I could get it. I think I went a little further on the Walmart bike, but at the end of the day, it's not fuck suspension. Oh yeah, we are cooking. All right, no flats so far, that's good. I think what's saving us here is these tires are significantly higher volume. They're wider, there's more air in them, and the 29-inch wheels tend to help a little bit with flat protection too, because the actual wheel is hitting the obstacles at a different angle. It's really surviving this well, and because I did a review video on this bike, I've taken it through more runs total. One thing I will say about both bikes is they have adequate brakes. The levers on the Polygon are a little bit better. Those Tektro brakes have cool levers, but both are adequate. All right, so Ozark Trail made it through the whole thing with no flats. I didn't even hear so much as a ping. So in my humble opinion, climbing, Polygon takes the cake for sure. Way more enjoyable, better seating position. It's just easier. On descending, clearly, it's the Fast Flow. It held up and we just carried speed better. On a flow trail though, I might even give it to the Polygon. It's still a toss-up, but we can't ignore that blown tire and dented rim. And so with that, we have a lot of things to consider here, but at the end of the day, you want to know which one is king. Polygon offers a more balanced build, which in some ways sets you up better for the future. If you keep a mountain bike for a while, you'll tend to change some parts and make some upgrades. Polygon includes a better seat tube design, pivots that are really meant to be serviced, and when all is said and done, it's dramatically lighter, which does make a difference. And something I haven't mentioned, Polygon has great customer service if you're missing something and need a replacement part. Polygon is a legit brand backed by Bikes Direct. They've been around for a while. But is that enough? Walmart's Fast Flow gives you some great parts right out of the box. And those cheaper parts like the grips and the pedals and the saddle, they can be upgraded for a minimal investment, and these are things that people tend to replace anyway. That dropper post insertion depth matters, but more so on the size small. For some riders, it won't matter that much, and actually for a beginner getting their first real mountain bike, it could be nitpicking. And on the customer service side, Ozark Trail has been making gains, even including way to contact support out of the box. But all that extra weight, it's not gonna vanish by replacing the grips. That matters when it's a bike you pedal. But in the end, both bikes are going to have their limitations. In the Fast Flow video, I mentioned the size small does not fit a water bottle, despite it having little screws for it. Well, it turns out, neither can the Syscue. It's not even close. And so taking all of those advantages and limitations into account, I have to choose a king. It's the Fast Flow. At first, I was completely sure it was going to be the Fast Flow, but actually, it wasn't that easy of a decision. The Polygon had a lot of advantages that I didn't realize at first glance, but the Ozark Trail Fast Flow is the king of sub $1,000 trail bikes. That doesn't mean it's going to be the right bike for everyone. In fact, I would probably choose the Polygon for the weight and the seat tube, but I tend to upgrade things. And there's no denying that for most riders out of the box, the Fast Flow will provide a better experience. Just the 29-inch wheels and wider tubeless tires make an incredible difference that even novices would gain from. Not to mention, it's $100 less. It's the king. But I'm actually surprised at how good of a bike Polygon makes, and as you move up the product line, the math starts to change, and you begin to find some incredible value. This D6 that I didn't crown king, I still think it's a pretty smart use of $1,000. So Polygon and Ozark Trail, keep doing what you're doing. Mountain biking should not be exclusive, it should be inclusive, and that starts with economics. After shooting this video, we're donating both of these bikes to school mountain bike teams so they'll be put to good use and eventually find permanent homes with athletes that can use them. After all, parents have a lot to pay for these days, and our youth is being courted by increasingly aggressive algorithms. We need to divert their attention to things that are fun and healthy. Affordable bikes like these make that easier. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something, and if you didn't, I hope you at least found it entertaining. Thanks for riding with me today, and I'll see you next time.